Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Monday. I hope the week is starting well, wherever you are watching or listening to this around the world. Got to start today's show off with one of my apologies. There was no show yesterday. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get one done. I was in London for the weekend with my wife, celebrating a late birthday present for her. And yeah, it was just impossible. When it's all the Stranger Things show actually at the Phoenix Theatre, if you're a Stranger Things fan like me and you haven't made it to the West End show yet, then I do thoroughly urge you to do it because it was really, really good. So we had a very good weekend at a hotel and yeah, Stranger Things, and it was just impossible. So sorry, no show yesterday, but back today, and we'll continue to be back for the rest of the week. Of course, plenty to discuss in today's show. We're going to talk about Martin Odegaard, who's returning to Arsenal ahead of, for their pre-season that they are having now in Spain. Of course, we're going to talk about England and the Euros yesterday. A dramatic day at the Euros, and got some questions and comments, of course, from you guys as well. So let's get started, shall we? And we'll start with Martin Odegaard, who has now flown over and joined Arsenal for their pre-season training camp in Marbella, which, of course, is great news for Arsenal. Great news for Martin Odegaard as well. Really looking forward to seeing what Martin Odegaard is going to do this season. I think it's going to be a big season. I mean, the last two seasons have been huge for him anyway. Player of the season, 2 years in a row, of course. But just think, when you look at what's gone on this summer, and you've got the Euros, you've got Copa America, and yet Odegaard, after a couple of friendlies for Norway at the start of the summer, has just properly been able to recharge, been able to be away on holiday, clear his head, like I said, recharge, get over the disappointment of missing out on the title again last season. I just expect him, while other players might be coming back a little bit tired and they're going to take a while to get into the get into the swing of things as the season progresses, he should be bang on it from the start. And I'm really looking forward to see what we're going to get from the captain this season. So he's headed over. He's linked up with the squad in Marbella as they continue to work on their fitness ahead of the start of official pre-season. Thomas Partey as well heading over there. Gabriel Jesus. I think there's another player as well. It's going to be 10 joining up with the 6, or sorry, another 4 joining up with the 6 that have already gone out there last week, and that is going to make 10. I can't remember who the 10th person is going out with Odegaard, Partey, and Jesus, but of course they're linking up with the likes of Reece Nelson, Urian Timber, Ben White, Eddie Nketiah, Emil Smith-Rowe, who are already over there for this training camp, which I still think is a really interesting thing. I've got a comment here actually from Dan, who says it's common for NFL teams here in America to do mini camps before pre-season starts. I'm wondering if that's where Arteta got the idea from. I've got to say, Dan, I reckon you're probably right with this one. It's a really good point to make. I remember sitting down with Arteta last season at London Colney when I was interviewing him before the season started, and we were speaking about his links with NFL coaches and NBA coaches and how much he really sort of wants to learn from those guys. He's obviously very close with Sean McVay over at the LA Rams as part of the KSE franchise, and he was telling me about how he really likes to learn from those guys. And yes, it's different sports, but you can always pick the brains of sort of elite level coaches from other sports and use some of that for what he's doing. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if he did get this idea from that. I know that Arsenal have seen that some of their players in recent years have gone over and done things individually with their own fitness coaches and headed over on holiday, had a holiday somewhere, but always done a bit of fitness stuff during the day. And they've probably seen that and thought, well, let's bring it under the club umbrella, get everyone over there together. We know Arteta loves getting his players away. Every time he goes over for Dubai for the mid-season break, he loves that time of having the group together. And yes, they work really hard when they're doing their fitness stuff, which is what they're doing right now. But he thinks the time of having them away just really helps sort of with the bonding and things like that. And so I think that would be a big part of this as well ahead of the new season, just to reconnect and everything with the players. And yeah, so it's a really interesting point, Dan. I think you're absolutely spot on that. So yeah, the news from Marbella, Martin Odegaard now over there joining up with the rest of his teammates ahead of Arsenal's start of official pre-season in just a couple of weeks' time. Right, we've got to talk about England. We've got to talk about Jude Bellingham. Just truly dramatic winner. Equaliser for England yesterday. Deep into stoppage time after what had been a horrendously bad performance from England. Just awful again. I went into it with so much hope. Not hope. Maybe that's the wrong word because I wasn't sure if I would. But I was really hoping that now that the group stage has gone, that something was going to click in England and they were going to stop playing like individuals. The team was going to just suddenly start playing like we know they can play, but it didn't happen. It was the same old story. They were awful, and Slovakia would be feeling so hard done by of not getting the result they probably deserves yesterday. But the one thing with England, even when they do play terribly, which they have been the entire tournament, they've stunk the tournament out so far, they do have individuals who can just do something like that, a real moment of magic. And that's what Jude Bellingham did yesterday, because he was just as bad as anyone else. In fact, he was really, really poor, I thought, Bellingham yesterday. I was talking to my mates on WhatsApp during the game in our football group, and I was just saying, Bellingham's been awful. He's just done absolutely nothing in the game, and he hadn't been poor. I thought his body language was really, really poor. And then bang, he pops up with a moment like that to rescue England, rescue Gareth Southgate, whose in-game management I thought was so bizarre yesterday. The fact he only made 2 substitutes until deep into stoppage time. And I know he made the Tony sub, and he ended up playing a part in winning the game for England, setting up Harry Kane in extra time. But still, it was inexplicable until 2 minutes into injury time to put on Ivan Toney or Ollie Watkins or someone to try and do something different. It was inexplicable. It's not, it wasn't a genius stroke to throw on Ivan Toney at that point. It wasn't. England won that game not because of Southgate, but in spite of Southgate, I have to say, yesterday. But it's not just down to Southgate. It's not just down to the manager. It's down to the players. They need to play better. They need to perform better. And no one is performing to their levels at the moment. And it's just such a strange watch, and it's a difficult watch. But they got the job done. And who knows? This is tournament football. You can suddenly have an awful group stage, and then something can happen, and bang, you're into the tournament. And England have got a chance. They're in the quarterfinals of the European Championships. It looked like Bukayo Saka, Aaron Ramsdale, Declan Rice were going to be coming home early, which would have been good for Arsenal. Of course, I'm sure Mikel Arteta, as much as he wants his players to do well, would have been sitting there thinking, it might not be too bad to have those 3 players back. They'll basically be able to come over for the whole of the pre-season tour if they go out, but they are staying. They live to fight another day. They're going to have to play a hell of a lot better to beat Switzerland, to get past Switzerland in the quarterfinal next Saturday, because Switzerland are a seriously good team. They've been so impressive so far in this tournament. They breezed past the Italians in their game at the weekend. Granit Xhaka once again bossing things in midfield. We're going to have Xhaka versus Declan Rice, with lots of narrative in that. I thought Declan was absolutely fantastic yesterday in a game where he was just left completely on his own in the middle of the pitch. I thought Mainu did all right, but whenever you looked at Declan Rice, he was having to cover for absolutely everyone in that game. The defence were poor. The fullbacks were abysmal. Kyle Walker's worst I've seen him play for, pretty much ever. Kieran Trippier, not much better. And Rice was just having to cover so much space all on his own. He was absolutely exhausted on the end. But you look at his stats at the end of that game: 109 touches, 100% tackles won, 100% dribbles completed, 90% pass accuracy, 80 passes completed, 7 out of 7 long passes completed, 6 out of 6 ground duels won, 4 out of 4 tackles won, 3 shots, 2 interceptions, and 1 shot, of course, that came back off the post where he was so unlucky not to equalise. I thought he was England's standout player by a distance in yesterday's game. I know Jude Bellingham got the man of the match at the end of it, and I can kind of understand why, because it was his moment of absolute magic that salvaged the game for England. But where others around him were so poor, and I put Bukayo Saka into that because I thought Saka had a poor game again. He's had a poor tournament in my mind, aside from that first game where he looked lively. I don't think he's being helped by the way England are setting up, and he's having no help around him. There's no one to do those sort of flicks around the corners too that he likes to do, and then get on his bike, turn the fullback and go. It's just not. England aren't players to his strengths at all. Every time he gets the ball, he's got his back to the fullback. The fullback is right behind him, waiting to basically kick him up in the air. So it's been really difficult for Saka, but he still needs to find a way to make more of an impact in games like the rest of the England attack do. But yeah, I thought Declan Rice was outstanding and definitely the pick of the bunch in my mind for England yesterday. Going from that England performance to Spain versus Georgia, like pretty much immediately after, it was like watching a completely different sport, wasn't it? The pace, the movement, the technique, the pressing, just everything about it. It was a joy to watch after sitting through 120 minutes of that England game. And I thought Spain, once again, were just an absolute thrill. I thought Georgia, as they have done in the whole tournament, played their part. They can be so proud of the way they performed at this tournament. I thought they were excellent. Obviously took the lead early on, but Spain just came back and just kept going forward. It was just It was just non-stop, and it was incessant the way they were attacking. And Nico Williams, as he has been in the whole tournament, just superb down the left-hand side. Yamal on the right. How on earth he hasn't scored yet, I don't know. He should have scored about 10 goals so far. And so he's been brilliant. Just that, it's like you look at him and think, you're 16 years old. How are you doing this at 16? It's just a remarkable talent. But yeah, I think he'll be very disappointed he hasn't got himself on the target yet, because he's had so many chances to score that he hasn't taken. He had loads yesterday as well. But that was the only blight on what was an otherwise fantastic performance from him. And the two wingers, the way they were playing, when you look at Spain and how we've watched them play for the last 15 years, the tiki-taka, you've always thought they've got a defeat in them, because they can dominate a game. They can have 80% possession in a game. But there's always a chance that Spain just won't score. Or that's what you've always felt like over the last sort of 15 years of watching them. Or basically since their sort of dominance ended, when they won obviously the Euros and the World Cup, and after that period has sort of ended, you've always felt like they've got a 1-0 defeat in them, even after dominating a game. You don't really see that, or I can't see that watching them now, because they can still have the ability to keep possession and play the way they always have done. But they've also just got those wingers now who are just so direct out wide, and they just get into the penalty area. They just create so many chances. It's very, very hard to see them not scoring. And yeah, I mean, they've got a huge game coming up against Germany, but they've certainly been the team of the tournament for me so far, Spain. I thought they were excellent yesterday. And watching Nico Williams doing what he's been doing, it's very hard not to look at it and just think, yeah, I'd love to see you in the red and white of Arsenal. I mean, we've talked about it on this channel before. I know lots of you are very keen on Arsenal to try and activate this release clause for Nico Williams. I mean, he has put himself in the shop window in this tournament. Whether he actually wants to leave and go, we'll have to wait and see if anyone does trigger this release clause. But yeah, he's a hell of a talent, and it would be very, very exciting to see Arsenal make a move for him. We know they like him. We know they've watched him. We know the recruitment team likes him. It just depends whether they push the button and go for it or not. But he is certainly putting himself in the attention of all of the top clubs in Europe, if he wasn't already there with his performances. Elsewhere, a little bit of news doing around. Martin Hutchinson now has completed his move from Chelsea to Ipswich, about £22 million all in, I think, for that move for the former Arsenal player. Arsenal are going to get 15% of that fee as part of the sell-on clause that they've got for him when they struck their deal with Chelsea. Still had a year left in his contract at Arsenal when they sold him, 3 years ago now, whatever it was. Now he's obviously made this big move, and Arsenal are going to get 15% of it. So a little bit of cash coming in for Arsenal for Amari Hutchinson. I hope he does well over there, Amari. Obviously went to Chelsea. A lot of people were disappointed that he went to Chelsea, but he's got himself a big move out of it after that loan move to Ipswich, and he's going to be performing in the Premier League as well. Big signing for Ipswich, actually, and Arsenal getting a little bit of extra cash for their former winger. Okay, moving on to a couple of your comments now before we wrap things up today. Reese here. Is that Reese? Or Re-Ace96, I think I'll just say Reese. Right, it says, hi, Charles. Newcastle sold Elliot Anderson to Forest for 35 million. Surely that means we can use that figure to get more for ESR, who is clearly a better player. Like I said this in a show last week when someone said something similar about some of the moves doing, I think it was, what other ones have we had recently between some of the PSR clubs? I can't think of them off the top of my head. The Aston Villa and Chelsea, the Matson, and then the other youngster who went to Chelsea from Aston Villa. These aren't real transfers. They're not. They're just not. Elliot Anderson is not a £35 million player. These transfers, they're PSR transfers, and it's not right. It's the whole thing's murky, absolutely murky to me. I mean, it's classic football in the 21st century now. There's so much wrong with it. They're just not real transfers. I don't see them as real transfers. So I can't see, now that the June 30th deadline has passed and the PSR stuff has passed, I can't see clubs who are now going to be doing normal transfers in the proper transfer market will be able to point to these ones and say, well, look, Elliot Anderson went 35 million, because the other clubs will just say, yeah, but it's not real. We know it's not real. We know everyone knows what's going on. So I don't think Arsenal could point to that and say, right, well, Emil's worth more than that, because this is just not a real transfer. It's just not. And the whole thing is just not right, in my opinion. It's not right. And again, it's another big loophole that needs to be closed, because it's making a mockery of the market. And it's just really mad to watch from afar. Okay, one from Aaron now. Thanks for the video, Charles. Italy are officially out of the Euros, Xhaka Masterclass, which means Calafiori is now available for any transfer or negotiations. News keeps coming out. Recent reports suggest that Arsenal have already made official inquiries about the player, and Bologna is waiting for an offer to arrive from the PL. Reports also suggest that Calafiori deal is dependent on Kivior's departure. Kivior is also out of the Euros, and according to reports, has interest from Milan, Juve, and Napoli. Will we see some rapid developments around the left side defender deal now that the Euros has ended for some players? Know that TNAT said that on his Patreon that Arsenal remain interested in Hato. Calafiori is out on the market and could be a market opportunity. I don't think so. I've not heard anything. Me and Team News and Tips were talking about this on our show that went out on Saturday, and neither of us has heard anything. That obviously doesn't mean that it's not, the interest isn't there, but I look at this and it just feels like Locatelli all over again. And Arsenal were interested in Locatelli. I know they were, but he was always going to stay in Italy. He was always going to eventually move to Juventus. And even if Arsenal do have an interest in Calafiori, which I've seen has been reported, obviously, in Italy, I just don't, at this stage, I don't buy it. I just think he's going to end up going to move into another Italian club, probably Juventus, because that's just what tends to happen. And in terms of Kivior, the link, their interest from the Italian clubs has been there constantly, but I don't think Arsenal really want to sell. If someone suddenly whacked down a bid that was really, really appealing, then of course they would look at it. He's not an untouchable member of the squad, but I don't think Arsenal will be going into this window thinking we need to sell Kivior. He had a good season last season. He showed what he can do. He's going to keep improving. He's going to continue to settle and understand what Arteta wants from him. And so I don't really see that it's going to be a priority this summer. As I said, obviously, if a big bid comes in, they might look at it. And then if they do agree to sell, then they'll probably have to do something and look to bring someone in. I'd just be very surprised if it's Calafiori. But that's just, I haven't got information on that. That's just me talking as a hunch. But it's just how I feel about it. I just think he's going to make a move to Italy. Italian clubs love to put things out. It's the same with oh God, how have I forgotten his name? Striker who went from Fiorentina to Juventus, Vlahovic, when he was being heavily linked with Arsenal. And I was constantly being told by people I was speaking to, like, it's not right. Yes, there's interest there, but we're not bidding for him. We haven't bid for him. They're using our name. Fiorentina are using our name and interest and leaking it out to the press to try and raise his profile, raise his price, and make Juventus pay the money that they want, that Fiorentina want them to pay. And in the end, it worked. And it wouldn't surprise me if this is something very, very similar. Bologna know that he's probably going to go, and they're trying to drive up the market as much as they possibly can to get as much money as they possibly can out of Juventus for him. So that's just my view on it. But it is a hunch at this stage. And if I do get any information of it, of course, I will talk about it. But at the moment, I just don't have that information. All right, and that's it from me, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate your time. As always, have a very good start to the week, wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. And I'll be back tomorrow to do it all over again. Anything you want me to discuss in that show, you know what to do. Get down into the comments below with your question, your comment, your opinion. I'll pull some of them together and get them included. Until then, enjoy the football later, everyone. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.